today we're going to be talking about protecting the rights of people who rely on guide and service animals here in Nova Scotia. Guide dogs and other service animals provide critical support for Nova Scotians who are blind or visually impaired, and increasingly for people who have other disabilities. The Government of Nova Scotia wants your input about protecting the rights of people who rely on guide dogs and other service animals in their daily living. This could include, for example, people who have autism, have mobility issues, suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, have seizures, who experience dissociative identity disorder, or who have other disabilities that can be helped by a service animal. So this discussion paper outlines 4 issues and invites you to comment on each of these issues. The first issue is definition of service animal. So what do we mean when we say a service animal? Training standards is the second area. So what kind of training do service animals and guide dogs need in order to ensure that the animals behave well in public? 3 is identification standards. So that means what kind of standards do we need to ensure that you, as a person who uses a guide or service animal, has some sort of identification that proves that your animal is a well-trained dog. Your comments will help shape a provincial response, which could include legislation and/or an education campaign. You can participate in any of the following ways. You can email your comments to serviceanimals@novascotia.ca. Send your comments by regular mail to Nova Scotia Department of Justice, Policy, Planning and Research, P.O. Box 7, Halifax, Nova Scotia, B3J 2L6. You can also phone 902-424-7729 for more information or to ask questions. You can also use the TTY through the Disabled Persons Commission at 902-424-2667 or toll-free within Nova Scotia at 1-877-996-9954. You can also send a vlog in at the same email address as I listed before, serviceanimals@novascotia.ca. We respect your privacy. Your submission will become a government record and is subject to Nova Scotia's Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Any personal information in your submission will be kept in confidence, subject to the requirements of the Act. I'm now going to give you a bit of background to why this is being done. Nova Scotia has laws to protect people with certain disabilities who rely on guide and service animals. For example, the Blind Persons Rights Act addresses the rights of people who are blind or visually impaired, but it does not address the rights of people with other disabilities, nor the rights of people who use service animals other than guide dogs. Secondly, the Human Rights Act prohibits discrimination against anyone with a disability, and so the potential range is much broader. It specifically refers to hearing ear dogs as well as guide dogs. But again, this legislation does not address users of service animals other than those specifically included in the Act. Several other jurisdictions now have laws that encompass all service animal users. Nova Scotia is proposing to confirm and extend rights protection for guide and service animal users. This would help to ensure their access to places and services that others take for granted, such as eating at a restaurant, going grocery shopping, taking a taxi, staying at a hotel, visiting a hospital, or living in the apartment of their choice. It would also help to protect the animals from harm or interference when they are working. At the same time, it would clarify the obligations of handlers to maintain care and control of their animals in public. So we're going to talk about the first issue, definition of service animal. There is a need to clearly define service animal. This will ensure the rights of service animal users, while placing appropriate limits on which animals are considered to be service animals. Service animals are individually trained to do work directly related to the handler's disability. They include guide dogs for the blind or visually impaired, hearing dogs, seizure alert dogs, and mental health service dogs. Although animals other than dogs are trained to help people with disabilities, the focus of this discussion is on service dogs. These are some examples of work they might do: helping with navigation, alerting an individual to the presence of people or sounds, pulling a wheelchair, helping an individual during a seizure, retrieving items, providing physical support and help with balance, preventing or interrupting impulsive or destructive behaviors. Service animals differ from therapy and emotional support animals that bring comfort and calmness to an individual. Unlike service dogs, therapy and emotional support animals may have limited or no formal training. Extending rights protection too broadly could discredit guide and service animals that are highly trained and well established. Animals not trained to high standards could also pose a public safety risk. So the proposal is that along with guide dogs, Nova Scotia is proposing to extend rights protection only to other clearly defined service animals. Animals used for therapeutic purposes would not be guaranteed the full scope of rights under any new legislation. So the question we would like you to answer is, should Nova Scotia limit the scope of protection to include only service animals, excluding therapy animals? You can answer yes or no and tick off the appropriate box in the guide. And there's also a space for you to write your reason, or as I said earlier, you can send in a vlog and answer the question. We're now going to talk about the second issue, training standards. Service animals must be safe for the public, and that requires high training standards. Although guide dogs for the blind and visually impaired have been trained formally for decades, the training of animals for people with other physical and mental health disabilities is more recent, and there are no national standards in place. The province needs to outline its expectations about certification standards for service animals, because training standards are critical to gaining public acceptance and for public safety. Nova Scotia is proposing to outline its expectations about certification standards. Similar to other jurisdictions, the province could require that new service animals be certified by a school or trainer accredited by Assistance Dogs International, ADI for short. ADI is a coalition of not-for-profit organizations. Its accreditation system is comprehensive, and members are regularly assessed to ensure they meet the high standards expected of assistance dog programs. Training standards could also be clarified for guide dogs that receive training through the International Guide Dog Federation, IGDF for short. Both ADI and IGDF are internationally recognized training schools. Existing guide dogs and service animals with certification would continue to qualify. Animals working in a service capacity without certification could also be given an opportunity to be certified through a successful assessment by a third party. There's two questions to answer in this section. The first one is, should Nova Scotia identify certification standards for guide and service animals? And again, you can say yes or no and then give your reason. The second question is, should Assistance Dogs International, ADI, be the certification standard for service animals? Again, you can answer yes or no and then give your reasons. There's a second part to this second question, and that is, should the International Guide Dog Federation, IGDF, continue to be recognized as a standard for guide dogs? Again, answer yes or no and give your reasons. The third issue is identification standards. It is unclear what form of proof should be required for handlers and animals to receive legal protection. Guide Dog Users of Canada has expressed concern about fake identification and equipment available online, and about people passing their pets off as legitimate working dogs. Nova Scotia is proposing to clarify visible identification standards to distinguish certified guide dogs and service animals from other animals. This could include providing provincial identification cards for guide and service animal teams. While such visual identification would not be mandatory, it would be required for the handler and animal to be protected under any new legislation. Here are the questions that we would like you to answer. Should Nova Scotia clarify the visible identification standards for guide and service animal teams? Again, answer yes or no and give your reasons. The next question is, should the identification standards include a provincial identification card? Again, you can answer yes or no and give your reasons. We're now going to do the fourth issue, which is penalties. Right now, a person who violates the Blind Persons Rights Act is guilty of an offense and liable on summary conviction to a $200 fine. The amount of the fine is low compared to other jurisdictions and might not be a real deterrent. To bring Nova Scotia in line with other jurisdictions, the province is proposing to increase the fines for breaking any new laws. The province would also amend the Blind Persons Right Act to increase the penalties for breaking that law. The question to be answered is, should Nova Scotia increase fines for breaking the laws that protect guide and service animal users? And again, you can answer yes or no and give your reasons. Do you have any additional comments you would like to share? Please share your response in the page that's provided for you, or if you're doing a vlog, you can provide additional comments if you would like. This next section is optional. The information will help us to know if we have heard from the range of people across the province. So please check off the categories that most apply to you. Are you a guide dog user, a service animal user, a guide service animal trainer, a business operator, and if so, what sector? A business association, and if so, what sector? A disability agency staff member, a government staff member, a community group, and if so, what service? A public service provider, and if so, what service? A concerned citizen, or other. We'd also like you to please check the county where you are located. Annapolis, Antigonish, Cape Breton, Colchester, Cumberland, Digby, Guysborough, Halifax, Hants, Inverness, Kings, Lunenburg, Pictou, Queens, Richmond, Shelburne, Victoria, or Yarmouth. And if you're not from one of those areas but are from elsewhere, you can also list that. Thank you for your feedback.